Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Parks meeting. So we've got everyone in attendance today. Today we've just got a couple things on the agenda. The first one is I wanted to talk about my plan for an ad hoc committee to get a Norwood Parks master plan started. So master plan is something that a lot of cities have done. I have some nice examples of some recent ones done by Middletown, Stowe City, which is up near Akron, and is it just Middletown again? So typically, oh yeah, that's just an extra one. If you guys want to look at this, we can keep passing it around. This is part of the parks audit too. So a couple years back, we did a park audit. Well, ASAP Norwood did a park audit, and that kind of tells us what we have in the parks. But the idea of a master plan is that we look at what the parks were, we look at what we have now, and then we see what people want from the parks. So right now, we don't have an official master plan. Obviously, a lot of people have ideas of what we want the parks to be, but ultimately, it should be something that residents should have a big say over, because they're going to be using it. Like, I don't have kids. I don't play on playgrounds that much, usually. It's a slippery table. So, another thing with master plans is a lot of times you bring in an outside consultant to help with that, which is what I would like to do, but we don't really have the money in the budget right now. So my thought was, well, let's at least try something. We don't have to do a master plan for every single park that we have, because we have 12 parks, and that's like a lot. I figured tonight what we could do is form kind of an ad hoc committee of people to help select what parks we want to focus on. I was thinking 2 or 3. Help spread the word and send out a survey about what people use the parks for now and what they want to see. And like maybe they have ideas from other places they've been in the Cincinnati area and other places of what they might be interesting or cool to have in Norwood. Obviously, splash pad is always something people bring up. Then we can use that information to make basically a plan. So I have some examples of some of the conceptual plans that Middletown and Stowe have done. So I'm just going to pass these to you guys. And so there's a lot of different ways that people conceptualize what they want the parks to look like. You know, they have like basically an aerial shot of the park and say, okay, here's what it looks like now, here's what we want it to look like in the future. We can also include a cost breakdown, so I can work with Darren and Clint to get an idea of how much would it cost to actually do the splash pad or a new natural playscape or whatever. And then try to figure out a timeline that works for our city's budget. So I figure this is something that is not going to be a committee, like an ad hoc committee that meets like forever and is like another art board or anything. This would be something that we would take the next 2 or 3 months and get it done, have something presented to us and then to council by, I'm hoping by before the holidays start. And then we can work with Darren and Clint and Gabby and see what's feasible, what's not. So, sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking, but does that sound good to everyone? Yeah. All right, cool.
It sounds like a task force.
Yeah, it's a task force, ad hoc committee. I didn't really know what to call it. It's just like a limited scope, very, very limited scope,
right.
Limited amount of time. I know that a lot of people who care a lot about the parks are also very busy with other stuff and have kids. And I don't want to have them have a 2-year-long process that they don't ever get to escape from.
Is your expectation that you would tell them, or this committee would say, these are the 2 parks or 2 or 3 parks? Or is that something you think that the committee would figure out?
My expectation would be maybe we could talk about that tonight and see what you guys think. I mean, there's some obvious ones that are not good candidates. For instance, Hunter Park has already gotten a nice refresh recently. Heritage Park, up above us, it's already just gotten recently refreshed. And Waterworks is probably kind of too big in scope for a refresh, and it's got the complication of having the pool and the athletic fields and all of this stuff. So my thought was some of the smaller parks, some of the neighborhood parks we could focus on: Burwood, Doral, Barsh, Northwoods. And my feeling was we could, those of you who are here, if you use the parks which ones you feel might be good candidates. So, any input from the peanut gallery? And I say that lovingly.
The only feedback I have is just from our experience putting the park audit together, was just how other cities had done it, and just kind of looked at the use, looked at kind of taken feedback from different people in the neighborhood, and tried to kind of pick like small winners, like a big park, a small park, you know, like something that ranges, you know, in complexity, and start there, you know, and sometimes it was one where there would be a lot of people in the neighborhood that could volunteer their time and, you know, set up events like at off-pike to take feedback on what they want to see or things like that. So it, you know, I kind of see it as, you know, recommendations, kind of taking input. I think I've still got old survey.
Yes, so
data.
that's
I mean,
another
I
part.
can-
I wanted to
yeah.
make sure that surveys that had already been
Yeah.
done, we integrate those
Okay.
into that. We don't have to redo things that have already
Some
been
of it
done.
isn't applicable anymore because
Yeah.
you said some of them
Yeah.
got refreshes. But when you said something about, well, I don't have kids, I don't think parks
Yes,
should be
yes.
just
No,
for
that's
kids.
true. That is
You
true.
know,
That's-
parks should
that's
be
one
for
of my
all.
That is true.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to imply that so much as I only use the parks in one way. I want to make sure that it's also good for people with families or older people or people with pets. So,
Or just old people like me.
or yeah, older people, older than me.
I think the park analysis included the results from them.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
there were some recommendations in there too, just based on the consultant that was hired. So I mean,
Right.
as long as those are getting taken, I mean, we can do whatever we want them, but
Yeah.
again, that was money spent.
So
on what
in
we
that,
had.
what you're talking about, it outlined like the goods and the bads,
Mhm.
right? And like the Middletown one there, I really like that because it grades those things.
Mhm.
So if we're looking at something like we can have the online to evaluate and look at the state of the
Say the
union
parks.
of the parks. I think something like that's good. I don't know if they've looked at that or not, but it just says like landscape. play
Fair,
area
good,
stuff,
yeah.
Fair, good, bad, whatever. I think that's good. I don't want us to lose sight either that whenever we did start that, one of my roles was, hey, let's try to find funding and make sure we have it.
Yes.
There is capital funding already in place that we have there. It's like part 1, part 2, part 3. We're waiting on that list to start plugging
Right.
names in. And I even just sitting here like talking points. I put on here like, you know, separate plan for Waterworks and
Absolutely.
Millcrest because they're bigger.
They're so big. Yeah.
So if we take that capital improvement, I don't think anybody has it in front of them right now. So
No, I was
don't
looking, I
want
don't have
to
it.
quote me, but I can't remember how many exactly. You know, that was more in thought process from our last committee of like the Burwood Parks, the Fenwicks, Hunter, which is taken care of.
Right.
Linder, Marsh, those smaller parks, that Tower Park, which
Tower. Yes. Ventura. Very well.
I didn't. I'm going to star that one as like, hey, I'm putting together my 3 of what I think, and Tower
Yeah.
Park is one of those. I think that's very neglected, like
Absolutely.
very barren up there. A lot of people don't know, hey, there's a park up there because it's just
Absolutely.
not very used because of the state of it. I think versus
Yes. Yeah. I
where
think
it's at.
it's a great
But-
location. It's
Yeah.
just
so not to reinvent the wheel too much, and so we can hit the ground running faster. Using that capital funding that we have earmarked out for it, putting these smaller parks in kind of in line with the list of bad to good, and then taking Waterworks and Millcrest and making those like probably where maybe this year we focus a little bit more money over here on this big park, and then maybe a couple years this big park
Right.
is that big one. If we're getting Waterworks completely done in a year, that's awesome. But
Right.
I don't know if it's gonna happen, you know? So having a sub plan for those bigger parks and then having these smaller ones, the neighborhood parks, put in order there,
Mhm.
that I think would go a long way and we'd get a lot further,
Mhm.
faster.
I agree.
But if we're tallying like the parks that I think, and I don't have the list in front of me, I have this list. I don't know if that's the list
That
in
is-
order. Is it?
That is not the list in order. It's just the list of
Yeah.
parks and
Alphabetical.
alphabetical.
Yeah,
I
but
didn't
like
wanna
from
bias
what I can
anyone,
remember, I
so.
think Fenwick Park is up there.
Mhm.
Victory and Water Tower Park, I think, are a good start for if we said, hey, we want to look at 3. I think
Yep.
those 3 are very good starts.
So one of the things that I don't disagree with any of that, but just like kind of add on mostly with her, one of the things that really struck me when she gave the her feedback was like not just which parks should we focus on first, but like, she was talking about having a plan for what our park system looks like.
Right.
So like, these parks focus on the young children, these parks focus on, like, we need something for teenagers. Waterworks is, you know, a good candidate for that, and probably Mocrest too. But like, which parks are like meant to attract the teenagers? Which ones are supposed to attract like all the citizens? Like, to me, Victory should be something for everybody. Should
Right, 'cause
enjoy
it's right
going to
there in the
Victory.
middle.
So it can be this
Yep.
melting pot. And I think Victory should have like an amazing plan for it,
Mhm.
and we shouldn't like throw some stuff on it to call it like,
Good
hey,
enough.
usable. Like,
Yeah.
I think that could be like a gem of our city. So I wouldn't want to rush doing that. I mean, if we can do it right now, I would love that
Right.
so very much. But in my mind, that should be like something really big. So I think you should have like a master plan of what, like, which, it definitely tons of residents want naturescapes.
Right.
But not at every park, and I don't think it would like be fitting at some of the more like small neighborhood parks, but at a place like Burwood would be really great for nature. I think we need Burwood butterfly trails. One of the Strong Towns candidates had like crushed gravel trails going through wildflowers. So, you know, Renee Durker and Dana Bull are always posting on the Norwood Gardens, and a lot of other people too, in favor of you know, the wildflowers and all that, and that space. And then we could make it so that Waterworks doesn't need, or so that Public Works doesn't need to mow down there just a couple times a year. I don't know if you would know how many often.
Right, and that
then,
would,
so it would just
yeah.
be this beautiful place, and then have like a nature
Naturescape,
playscape
yeah.
there as well.
Yeah, because they're trying to pull out all the old equipment from there
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. It's just been a matter of trying to get the manpower, because as always in the summer things
Sure.
are crazy.
And I'm not saying that Burwood should be first, but if we could look down the line at what each of them should be.
Yeah, so I
And then I think we can figure out which one should go next, because of like, either it would be a unique one, like we did the dog parks first because they're really unique.
Mhm.
So maybe the naturescape does go first because it's like another unique step, or Victory because it would be a unique gem.
Mhm.
It's like, anyway, I think we should know what each of the parks should look like, and then choose which three.
Well, I
should
think
be.
what you're kind of saying is almost like this one from, I guess, the city of Stowe, where it kind of lists like what's all there.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So that way people get online, they know, well, we're gonna go to the park. Well, we went
What
to
are
Marsh
the
Park, and that's
amenities,
great
yeah.
for like
The other thing.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe
Teenagers.
Hunter Park is us because we want to go on a walking path, or
Yeah.
Linder Park, you know. So that's something that
I love that.
I like the idea that the city residents could see, and then something more like the Middletown one there, where it has the good ferry back, something that we can see, the
Yeah,
city
more.
can see.
Yeah, and not all of this has to be for everyone.
To grade the
basically.
upgrades, and I can't speak for where it's going to go, but where I had it going from the early works with ASAP, and that was the more money up front for some of the parks that are worse, and then as it goes year by year by year for the, you know, park 3 and 4, park 5 and 6,
Yeah.
or less money. So, but it's more years out, so we can start working on grants now. You can say, hey,
Yeah,
all
and
right,
more
this
funding
park's coming
sources.
up.
Yeah.
I want to try to champion that. I want to go get all this grant funding, and maybe we have, say we pick 3, and there's 2 that are really bad, and they need to be up there to get bulk of that money. But then maybe we have that one where it's the third one where it's not so bad, but we want to do something very unique and different where they get pushed up in there, you know, because what we were talking about, even like the mayor said a couple times with the streets plan, hey, we might go down the list a little bit and pull one of those up first because of the
It all depends on
necessity of it.
funding. Yeah.
We're providing a list for people to see so they kind of know,
Yeah.
but I think when we put in that capital plan, that's when we've already talked about, we just discuss, okay, we're putting here, here, and here, so residents can kind of see that. And then we can justify and explain why this park is going before this one
Mhm.
for reasons like that.
Yeah, and if we
Yeah.
have a good master plan that says, we want Burwood to be the natural thing, and it's number 4, but then we stumble upon a grant for naturescapes and wildflower, prairie flowers.
We
and
have
stuff,
something already
and it's
ready to
like,
go.
man, we
Yeah.
gotta do this grant and get that, so like we know down the road, instead of being
Right.
like, oh, well, Marsh is what we're focusing on right now, let's put
Yeah.
prairies
And,
in
and,
Marsh.
and with the capital plan too, it's not all set in stone. So say we got 40 grand for it, we can get a 40 grand grant. We only need to use 20 city money there. We can take that other 20 and move it down to the next year for
Mhm.
that park that got bypassed that needs a lot.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
things like that can be worked.
So I think there's also an opportunity that if you have a plan for each of the parks and you have a cost, there's someone that you an organization or a company or an individual who wants to do something,
Yeah.
you have
You
a
can,
plan.
you
and
have
say,
a
"This is
a
what we
buffet.
So saying like you see it, it's like, all right, well, you know, Marsh Park's right by my house.
You know,
and
I'm gonna get a
that's
scratch
not
out
for
here before I die.
Mark. Well, just for instance, like yeah, so
In your
say I
front
live by
yard.
Marsh Park, and I'm like, all right, that's coming up in 2025. They're looking at it. I can start planning now and getting around the people I need to get around, and you know. So when we did Lisa Tanner, not so much Lisa Tanner, we didn't get as much outreach, but Hunter, we did a lot of like what the model we were going for, I guess there was reach out to residents. What do they want? There was a cleanup. We talked to a lot of residents, did a survey online, and took those results and kind of created Hunter that way. So I mean, the bones are there, the process is there. It's what
So-
we kind of
Yep.
started it as.
I really like everything everybody's saying, and I liked what you said about why are people using the parks. And so what I find is that when you ask people, like, what's the barrier? Why are you using the park? That will give you the feedback you need to respond with a creative solution. And that's when you can say, that'll be our prompt for our creativity. You know, you hear about vandalism at Hunter, or it's just very sad. So maybe they want lighting, maybe they want Friday night events, you know, activation, so there's more people around, more eyes on the park. So when you find out what the barriers are, like you mentioned Marsh Park, and it's, to me, Marsh Park is really kind of perfect. I mean, I really like it, and I don't hear any complaints about it. So if you came in and said, I'm doing my like big visible thing, that might like not land, that might not really live well with everyone. So I would be just very careful about that.
So the next step, what I would want to do, and what I would need help from people, is to make a survey and get it around to as many people as possible. So I have a Google Drive that I've set up that I'm going to send to everyone here, which has the park audit, has these examples of master plans, like the whole thing, because they're like dozens of pages. And frankly, I didn't want to waste the ink. Also, just some survey questions I had ideas for. So my thought was, in the next week, you guys can take a look at it, see if the survey questions make sense. I based them on surveys that other cities had done, so they're not just coming out of my butt.
Are they different from the surveys that were in the park audit?
They're a little different. It's
Okay.
more just like, here are all.
Great Parks in Hamilton County just
Yeah.
went through a whole master plan
Right.
last year, and they did theirs all online.
Yep.
You could log in and it would say, for instance, Victory Park, like, what do you currently do at Victory Park? And you had, there was a whole list of things, and you could check what you currently do. And then the next thing was, what would you like to do at Victory Park? And then there were some fill-ins that you could check, or there was a blank thing for suggestions.
Yeah.
And they did that for each park, and you could go online and do either all the parks or just the park you knew or whatever. So I didn't know if the IT folks here that
Well, actually,
do all the IT
we
stuff
currently-
would do something like that.
We probably could. We currently don't have the capacity, but Chris and I are on the diversity equity, and we're looking at getting a SurveyMonkey account, which allows for unlimited questions, because I thought I could just do it myself, and I only get 10 questions.
Yeah.
You can't get any information with
Right.
10 questions.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
something.
something
so if
like
we
that.
have-
I have a Red Cap account at the Children's, and that's a wonderful program that's actually pretty easy to learn. They pretty much make those classes available, and
Is there a
and
cost
they-
for it?
Not, I mean, they don't charge me for it because, you know, we're working on all this stuff. But what's great about it is it has branching logic. So if you said, why don't you like visiting Victory Park at dusk? And you could say, oh, well, there was a creepy dude there once. And then say, did you call, then you could have another question branching from that. Did you call the police? Did you walk away?
Yep.
Did you call your husband? Like, what, you know, what was your response to that? And so then they can figure out what people are just like dropping out of what our parks as an amenity.
Right. So we can focus on getting those surveys out. My feeling, again, like in the next week, everyone take a look, add survey questions, see if they make sense to you, look at other parks master plans. And then whenever the SurveyMonkey or RedCap or whatever we decide is available, just kind of do a blitz and try to get as many people to answer as possible. For the other places, they gave about a month for survey responses, and I feel like that's a good amount of time, especially with school starting. My thought was we could print out some like small things with QR codes, give them to the students, and then they could
Those are easy to
just
set
you know
up.
they could scan the QR code, go straight to the survey on their phone, their
That's
parents'
something
phone, or
that
they
you need to
could.
give the school board to make sure that they're,
Right.
because they gotta okay everything you give the students. or-
Absolutely.
Or if
So
they
we can-
allow you to tape them to the front door and stuff like that.
Yeah, so just any way that we can get them to as many different types of eyes as possible.
And if we could utilize the upcoming events that we have going on, I think there's probably another off-bike market before then, if we can get it together. And then,
There's a
The
football
historic
game
home
Friday.
tour, yeah,
the historic home
football.
tour.
The football game
Yeah, so
Friday.
it's like, what can we do in the fall to raise, like, to kind of build it up? And then maybe use the winter as a time to, like, gather information, kind of figure out.
Two good ways would be there. I mean, there's football game Friday, that's a little soon, but there's football home games and there's a
Okay.
schedule out. Little Indians football, they do Saturdays there.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's
So-
all K through 6
Yeah.
kids.
It's
Yeah.
very important that. you
Soccer games
identify
especially too.
that people say which ward they're in, because
Yep,
that way,
that would be a part
otherwise
of
you're
the-
not getting just all.
Ward
two
1 or Ward 2, yeah, that's what, one of the questions I have, and like, what your age is, what do you want to see most in Norwood's parks, out of all the parks, which 3 do you feel need the most improvements, you can rank them, so there's
Do you
all
live
sorts of
near-
ways.
which park
Yeah,
do
which
you
park
live
do you
in?
live near, stuff like that, so
Well, the
which
whole
park do you
ward
use?
question might be
Yeah.
hard because people might not know.
Well, I
Right.
can give you, I made a map for ours because we had that exact same problem. I mean, people who I thought were really in the know didn't know who their council person was or which ward they lived in. And it has changed around quite a bit. I mean, Ward 3 has kind of jumped the lateral, right? It used to be all the way. I
Right.
didn't know that,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I thought
It's been
Emily
that
was
way.
running and I thought, why is she? Okay.
So the nice thing about getting something like survey monkey is it won't be calculated data for you.
Yes.
Whereas if we're just doing Google form,
Yeah, I want to make it as easy and the least annoying process that it can be. And the quickest way to do that is to have a service that already exists tabulate the results and spit out the information.
Like, after the whole park audit, like, trying to get all that together, I completely agree with spending the extra money to get it.
Yeah, and it's not that
Makes
much,
it, like, a
it's
little
not
bit
that
more.
much money for
No, God,
that,
that's
so
ridiculous.
it's like an expense that's gonna save us so much time, and time is money, as they say,
So
so.
the other thing is, and I don't know where this fits into this, is like, we were talking about Linder Park the other day, how, you know, have the volunteers that came out for months, some months and looked on the trails and now they're completely overrun.
Oh.
And so that, you know, maybe Linder Park itself, there are some things that need to be done, especially like around the duck pond, and I know the city's rebuilding the bridge and there's some other things that are happening. But in that park, say for example, maintenance is really, the trail maintenance is really the biggest thing that needs to be done, and that would be something that would be an ongoing budget, not just a one-time thing.
Right.
There
So
is
building
part of
that
that
in.
in the capital plan each year for park maintenance, and that's a big chunk of it as well.
I would think that Linda would have to be like a company, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine the.
There's so
public
much
works
there,
guys,
yeah.
being
It would
able
not
to
be-
keep up
Well,
with
they
that.
don't
It's a lot different than Hunter Park maintenance, Burwood maintenance, stuff like that.
Yes, that's a
It's
big-
Yeah.
constant.
Yeah.
Turner Farms hires a company for their honeysuckle removal, and it's amazing. Like, I have been out there, and you don't see any honeysuckle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a company that comes out there,
Oh,
and that's
and-
their main
That's
thing.
dedicated to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that's
or we
something
can
to
buy
think
some
about on the
goats.
regular.
Another thing worth looking into is something that, I mean, I was told coming in, because I haven't been here forever, that we used to do that we haven't done is going around like the fall and winter trying to get businesses to sponsor parks. To do some, Miss Lee, you know more about that.
Adopt a park, I think.
Adopt a
Oh,
park
no,
thing.
sorry.
Adopt a park, yeah.
You know, like, so
Adopt a
things
park
like,
is great.
things like Doral Park,
Mm-hmm.
where it's a big field, not a lot of play area stuff. We want to make certain changes to it.
The folks from, like, that,
The new
PLK.
place,
next to, yeah, no, next to PLK, the,
color something.
Acorn.
Multicolored.
Multicolored,
multicolored.
yeah.
They did a cleanup
For-
of Doral Field
yeah.
and planted, like, they tuck pointed
Yeah.
the.
Could we reach out to the
pillars.
chamber
So I feel,
Or
to
what?
see if they could facilitate that?
yeah, or like, do you know how it was done in the past? Do we know? Do we?
I think we had a
Just
list of
started.
parks and then there was a form that's, if somebody.
Gregor
um,
Rose did it.
Huh?
Greg O'Rose.
Yes, Greg Oros had a form, and I may have it somewhere on a flash
Because
drive.
that would be something I feel like it would help, not just maintenance, but, or say, hey,
Yeah.
we got constant volunteerism at Linder to
Yeah,
help out.
and that's where
And
the
community
master
ownership.
plan can really help, because then we
Right,
can say
yeah.
exactly what we want, exactly what we need, and what is the highest priority. And then they can choose, say like, I'd rather do this because
Yeah.
it's such and such, but at least we have information.
I was talking more like soliciting people to, hey, this part, this part,
Oh, yes, also that would be great.
We'll never turn down regular volunteers.
But yeah, so that's kind of my plan, is once SurveyMonkey stuff gets going.
And I just made a note to
Excellent.
check in with Keith
Yeah,
on
check in with
tomorrow.
that. I will, actually, if I can just get all your emails, I think I have them all.
I have another meeting to go to, but
I have
if I am,
I know you're
if I am happy, if I may be of assistance, if you think I will be of assistance, I will be happy to help you.
Perfect.
If not, that's okay too. So,
Honestly, the first
I
part is
offer
just
myself up.
reviewing the survey questions and making sure they make sense, and they're not like, it's not something that's gonna take half an hour. I'm thinking like a nice 10, 15-minute survey,
Yeah.
simple as possible, so people will bail halfway through.
And
Right.
I'll look at all the, because I think we had I think I kept all this in my drive,
Okay.
like funding sources, like just different notes from some of our meetings from, like, and this is almost 4 years ago that we started that project, so.
Yeah,
stuff
but
maybe, like,
folder.
Still good.
I've got like
Yeah.
a whole like thing on my
Yeah.
Google Drive, so anything I
great.
think might be of use, I'll drop
Yep.
in there.
So you
I think
guys-
there was some good like funding source, like at least we started like a sheet with possible funding sources.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. So that is, all that information is gonna be on the Google Drive, so you'll all have access to it. It'll be, you can edit all the documents on there. I just have a Word document with like 11 questions that I've thought of that would be good, so you can add your own, or any notes that you think of.
Another thing that I would suggest to add in the survey is where people can get updates on Julie.
Yes.
On the process?
On the process, yes.
Where will I see this information?
Yeah, when are we gonna see it, where are we gonna see it? Like, it's not just going into the ether.
Right, because
Right.
then they will have some motivation, right? Okay, I'm doing
Okay.
this.
So I figured I'm gonna link some of the plans that exist in the world, say like, here's what we hope it's going to look like, and it'll be available on the
It's
city
like a
website
yeah,
and Facebook,
designated
etc.
page on the
Yep,
website or something.
but yeah,
So the other thing just to offer, and this had to be decided quickly, but I'm gonna be working with the Xavier project management class again, and as some of you on the charter committee, they did some research for the council last year.
Mhm.
If you can use them, let me know, because the projects have to be turned in next week.
yeah,
So-
I will let you know. I figured 1 week, I'm trying to say 1 week to get this done, because I know how projects spiral into endless deadlines.
You don't have to, I'm just offering.
No, it is
that,
good to
and if
know.
there's something that you want them to do, they're the ones that can all that data from the.
Yeah.
website.
There may be something they can help with, even if it's just like a visualization thing. Having them as a resource would be good. So, cool. So all that makes sense. Cool. Great. This is just the first step. So I'm hoping in a week we don't have to meet again. I'll just like send out an email saying, hey, here's this, and we can figure out the best way to distribute the survey information.
Awesome.
Sound good? Great, cool. And then, the city willing, we'll have something really nice to show people in a couple of months, even if it's just for a couple of parks. It's okay. So the second part of the meeting, I just wanted to have Dana talk about her efforts with tree plantings that you want to do in Doral Field.
Right,
That's
so,
correct?
as you know, we had our grant participatory mapping,
Right.
Norwood Pool. And it came up that Robertson was really hot,
Mhm.
and parts of Smith, Norwood Avenue, Williams, of course, Lafayette was actually showing up a little hotter in some places than Montgomery, which was curious. And that intersection of Lafayette and Cameron and Montgomery was really bad. So, but I don't wanna, I could go down a lot of rabbit holes with our projects, and I'm gonna try not to do that. So, we had, planned to do a remediation or to sort of demonstrate what trees or different materials could do as far as, over time cooling these places. And so, we have a project with something that's not been approved yet, but I thought, well, why not offer some trees to residents and to Doral Field? So there are 3 trees that have come out. You can really see it from Google Earth and the map I sent you. Sort of one in the middle, one down at the end, and it's just 3 trees I'm proposing, but they would be canopy trees.
Right.
Now, if, I did talk to Gabby already, because if he was not interested, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on
Right.
this. Believe it or not, I don't like to spend a lot of time not getting paid for things.
It's weird. I love that.
So, we all have the same disease, right?
Yeah.
So, there's those 3 trees, and I'm not trying to jump the line with other trees. This is why this whole project was about evidence-based funding, which, trust me, as an artist and a creative, I like to just see things and fix them or do something cool, right? I don't like to wait on a lot of proof and
Right.
bureaucracy, which is what this feels like sometimes. But the fact is, a tree planted there is gonna do more for cooling the area. It's gonna help the residents across the street. It's gonna make people wanna go there and throw down a blanket and watch the game and stuff like that. So there's 3 trees there. You and I had talked about a tree at the Pocket Park. And that was more of I see this as, if I can get a canopy tree and a heritage tree that's special and unique, that might be a little more expensive than a resident would wanna spring for, like a bur oak or a big magnolia, or, you've seen the list.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want her to be like, candy!
Give me all the trees.
So for these 3 trees,
Gingerbread maple, what's that?
when were you thinking of putting them in, and where are they coming from?
So, we were thinking, I've talked to some volunteers, October 8th.
Okay.
Or
Put my
maybe
calendar.
in September. So, the other thing that I hadn't emailed you about, but there's also a really good spot, at the median on Floral that's just north of Smith.
Yes.
Opposite the
There's a couple of
church.
trees that are gone there.
Right, on that corner.
Yeah.
That would be a great place for a special tree.
Yeah.
And I'm totally open to working with you and Donna and Renee. And Renee got back and said she just wants native trees. I get it. So the Zelkovas will have to go home.
I did have a question on the Doral tree, Doral Park tree. And just first off, huge tree fan. My only question is this, and maybe you're a good person, by the baseball field, if that's gonna be a canopy tree, I'm just curious the possible impact it would have on the playing of baseball. Soccer didn't look like a problem.
Is
but
it replacing the one that
just-
was cut down?
I was just looking at that
I think
one.
there was a tree there before, so I don't know.
Right there.
I mean, I was thinking if it's gotta be a tree that
Oh,
if it
sorry.
gets hit by a ball, it's not gonna
Yeah.
keel over.
It's replacing trees that were already there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking in terms of, not the tree being in danger as much as the tree impacting the playing of baseball.
Okay,
Like
so-
line of sight
So
stuff.
you're saying, I'm hearing you say that you want something that's more conical than spread.
I'm not saying that at all.
Well, so you
I'm
got the
saying
trees
I'm
here on this
wondering-
side, and those are pretty offset from the field, and it seems that this is a little further down the line. And if it's gonna be as big as these, it wouldn't really impact the field of play as
Not
we're
really.
No.
Yeah.
That was my only
Because
question.
if so, it'd be something that would be cut back.
But you know what,
Yeah.
he's the best person to, because he's a sports guy.
Well, I mean, I think if this one was maybe just a
And
little
over
bit
there.
further, more towards the outfield area, and not a tree that would kind of go into the field, I think it would work.
Okay.
Yep, so I think that they are good places because we know that there were trees there in the past. We're just replacing what has been lost.
Thank you.
Then that'll be really nice.
Okay, so do you want one at Floral median, 3 on Doral, and 1 at Ellesmere?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine with me. And
Those are all
I
the
can
great
spots.
obviously I'll check with Clint and Darren and make sure there's no issues as far as utilities or any construction that's gonna be going in
Okay.
there. But I don't think there is.
Okay.
I would hate to like have the tree put in and then, well, as with the Williams Avenue Elementary, having to take the ginkgo out because, so just wanna think ahead and make sure there's nothing coming up in the next
It's
couple of
been-
years.
Yeah, I'll be triggered.
Can I also ask, Dana, you said you also have trees for residents?
Well, I think that I felt like the best way to deal with some of our, like a number of trees that I don't know is gonna be a flexible number, is to, use, OKI has a program called Tree for Me. And so offer that to residents on first come, first serve on Robertson. So that way, we'll be filling in a little, and then we'll just beef that up. I'm probably gonna offer one to the Catholic Church and one to the Nazarene Church, so that as you come in, that corner, if we can do the median, the Catholic Church, and it's really gonna
Improve that chunk.
And like the kids use that area all the time with the
Right.
Catholic Church.
So part of my dilemma here is, you know, if I give, it was kind of an eye-opener when we did the tree giveaway, because people wanted them and there were no barriers and there was no political problem and there was no, you know, they're going on private property. Now, and then there was no problem as far as city budget, where the cities are, you know, now you've gotta decide which part, right? Because that's all budget related. So if I have the trees and I give them to residents, whether it's the backyard or front yard, from a climate safe neighborhoods perspective, the problem is getting solved.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter necessarily where they plant them, just that they are planted.
Right.
Yes. Makes
So
sense.
probably what will happen on Robertson for that long block opposite the park, you don't have very big yards.
Right.
So a Zelkova is a perfect tree.
Yeah, and then you don't have to worry about the power lines, which
Don't
would be
have
an
to worry
issue
about
with
the
some of
power
these
lines.
larger
So-
trees, having to get them cut back all the time.
So and then the other part of that is we're not putting it in the easement. I tell people, this really isn't for your easement, so don't get me in trouble by doing that, but maybe some people did that, but.
But yeah, so that's great. I think we'll just keep in touch about that, and we'll make sure that there's nothing weird or hinky going on with stuff
Exactly.
that might disrupt them in the next
So
couple
the
years.
nice thing is that if I'm getting a yes from you, and then somebody comes along and says, I love this, maybe there could be more. I'm not, no promises.
Yeah,
but, you know.
more trees is good. I mean, a lot of our trees, we have beautiful old trees, but they're old. And eventually trees do die, even if we care for them very, very much. So thinking ahead and trying to replace them before we have to take them out, so we have kind of a more medium tree than a
Exactly.
small one to replace them, I think is a good way to keep thinking forward to the future.
Thank you. Anyway,
Oh, the
thank
other
you.
thing
Oh,
I
go
had,
ahead.
the other thing I had to ask you was, and this may or may not be something you can even help with, is Mad Tree does this like
The
planting
relief.
thing, but it explicitly does not include Norwood,
Correct.
which is rude. But
City of Cincinnati.
I didn't know how we might go about getting to be a part of that, or if that was even something you would know more about.
Well, maybe I have a few questions then.
Yeah.
But exactly, you know, the problem, so OKI has Taking Root. And Taking Root put together that funding for the trees, 57 trees
Right.
giveaway. And we gave away more trees faster than any community to date. That's how much we wanted them. And I said, well, why can't we do this again? Well, of course, they are obligated, it's regional, Ohio OKI, they have to spread it around. So, but they did take note that there's a desire for this program to happen again. So, I'm not sure how the relief program was funded, and I think, you know, Mad Tree ponied up maybe in part.
I spoke to them a few years ago because I was curious about that same thing. So this is a couple years old, but I was told that it was funding that was for the city of Cincinnati.
Okay.
Exactly.
So that's
That would be
why.
the issue. Okay, that makes sense.
So, and some of this, I think, is part of their 2030 program.
Right, because they've got that whole.
And I don't see Green Umbrella's logo on it, so I'm thinking it's like maybe predates Green Umbrella being really strong. But yeah, it's for the city of Cincinnati and somehow through the parks, but what they're trying to do is mitigate climate, and they can't just do it with parks, and they can't just do it with people, and they can't just do it with city park. So,
Cool. Well, that's great information. That was just something I saw today and was curious about, so I'm glad you also know.
I've talked to those people once at the brewery, or maybe I was drinking a beer, and they're very nice, and I gave them my contact information, and I thought, well, you know.
I know they've got a lot on their plate too, because they've still got a lot of communities that are getting these trees, so.
Okay, so I'll just circle back to, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, you know, how we care for our trees in Norwood and how we manage the process and how much energy we are into restoration projects widely, more than you might know, to the rest of the county and these other funders. So, you know, I'm just one person. We need to be, you know, echoing that we want this. So, you know, by saying, yes, we'll take those trees, thank you so very much, that it goes a long way, because I can say, well, look what's happening here.
I think, yeah, it's like with a lot of stuff, good builds on good. You know, it's like a little positive snowball effect.
So I'll tell you, you asked me, where do I get these trees? I can share that. Actually, I'm going to Siebenthalers. They're up in Beaver Creek. They have retail, and then they have a huge farm, which is beautiful, just jaw-droppingly beautiful when you come over the valley and it's all these trees. And then I stumbled on a place called Cheney's, which you can see it on 75 in Troy.
Yes, I know where that is. I've been there. Yeah.
So, and I said, you know, that place looks like a real gem. It just looks like a total gem. And, you know, their mom is still the one that,
Right. So it's a family operation. Yeah, I remember.
family operation, and at the end of the season, they really start slashing those prices. So that's why, you know, if I nail this stuff down and then I kind of go back. And,
You can get some good prices.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, you know, one thing that's going to happen is we're going to be taking delivery, and of course it's a long haul, and I have that worked out. I'm going to be for one, and then for the other, I'll probably rent a van and go get the rest of the trees. So, you know, anybody want to ride shotgun with me?
Do you need help planting?
Well, so one part of the project is going to all be commercially planted, and then this Doral, yes, that's going to be a volunteer situation.
Cool. Yeah, once
You
we
said October
October 8th.
8th.
And what I'm really hoping is that, well, we wanted to have a volunteer thank you, and we've had a lot of people help us, and so we'll probably have a volunteer
Great.
picnic.
Yeah, once you nail down a date, we can definitely spread it far and wide and try to get as many
no,
people.
Another tree source. Have you Quail Ridge specimen trees?
What is it?
Quail Ridge specimen trees.
I'll try that.
I'll send you. He's out in Oregonia, and like price wise,
Amazing.
You know,
and he'll like walk you
Interesting,
through.
interesting.
And usually every time I go, he's like, "You want that tree over there for free?" And I'm like, "Yes."
wow.
But all of it is native, so it's all sourced. Like he'll go and walk at the like Spring Grove Cemetery and get seeds and things like that. But he's got a really cool operation, and he's fun.
Great.
Tree guy.
So, what were,
Sorry to interrupt.
So-
you said,
Oh no, I was just saying that
talking about the volunteer.
volunteers, we'll spread the
Over the
information, and yeah, I'm excited to see these babies get in the
Okay.
ground.
So I usually for years, because taking root, they do these mini grants that are like $1,000, and then everything got planted on Make a Difference Day, which is the last Saturday in October. And I've been rained on. It's close to Halloween, and I just finally decided that was too late. It's right before the run. So, I mean, in my mind, it's still Make a Difference Day, but.
Well, we'll see.
Makes a difference day.
Yeah, it's a Norwood.
All right, in Norwood.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you, Dana, for the
Okay,
info.
thank
Do
I
you
just
have
had
any-
another question about the trees. Will you have the watering systems on them? Yeah. I'm just wondering, especially if they're new, how much attention to make sure that
They don't die.
that they don't,
Well,
they don't die.
actually, we were kind of hoping that the
Public
tree
Works.
board or Public Works could help us with that. The tree board I have been looking at the tie downs with they're like anchors that are like augers.
Oh, yeah.
And thinking that that's probably what we need, given foot traffic and stuff along roads.
Yeah, because we would hate to have also vandalism,
Mhm.
as we've seen
Yes.
on Lawson Way with some of the trees being torn down there.
Mhm.
That's something,
It's
hopefully,
really hard. It's hard to see.
hopefully they're visible enough that people will not feel drawn to tearing them down, but you never know. But yeah, well, thank you, Dana.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything you want to share? I don't want to like keep us here, forever, but I will be sending that information out since I have your emails. And I think I have, obviously I have you guys' emails. So, yeah, just be sure to take a look. I'll send a reminder email like here in 5 days to say, hey, please look, please help me.
No, this is really exciting. Like, I'm really glad to see this take shape and there be a plan for use in the future and something that people can refer back to. So
Yeah,
just
and I think
a whole sustainable plan for the future.
it's exciting for me, even just looking at like plans for parks that are not my own. I'm like, oh, this would look so nice when it's like Hunter
Yeah.
Park or Burwood. And I'm like, oh, I know these parks. So, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming.
Last 4 years, it's
And
exciting.
if you know of anyone who wasn't able to come or who you think might be a good person to contact, feel free to send me their email, add them to the list, I'll add them to the Google Drive.
Susan Daniels, obviously.
Oh yeah, I've already been in
Yeah,
contact
okay.
with her. So yeah, the final product in my beautiful vision that I have is we have the history of the parks included with that. So she's going to write me up some information about each of the parks.
I mean, I think like with the veteran stuff,
Yeah.
just to have like some kind of story or things
Yeah.
to read.
I think it's just neat to learn about the park's history, although, as Susan knows, some of the histories are a little more complicated, but that's a time for another time.
Well, yeah.
So,
We'll chat about
yeah,
that one later.
Thank you so much, and
All right,
thank you,
thank you.
Steve. We're
Thank you.
now.
Thanks.
Thank you.